where they are picking people and training them in consortium with international companies on how to actually run solar, how to repair solar, how to use the solar, how to do the wiring that's required of the solar, how to fix problems, and how to do all of these things. Now, when those guys come out from that educational background, they will be able to set up on their own. They've got particular skills they can put in. They understand the basic tools that are required. They can actually use some of the testing equipment in real life. And then you would then, at the same time, need to put some sort of youth empowerment programs together where they would be able to pitch their cases in order to be able to access some funds for some of the basic tools. Because a lot of, again, I go back to roadside vulcanizers, a lot of them don't even have a reliable pressure gauge. Now, if you don't even have a reliable pressure gauge, you're actually not being able to do a service. Let alone if you go to more advanced technology where you're talking about how you're going to mix concrete, the correct levels of mixing the concretes and so on, or you're talking about mechanical engineering, how you're going to do your feeler gauges for various things. A lot of modern equipment is all computerized, so you take your car in, you plug it into the computer, you have to have the relevant software, and it will do the diagnostic check for you. It's not a question of opening up the engine. You need to be directed to where to go to. So a lot of roadside mechanics need to step up the game. They're the ones coming out from these technical colleges need to have practiced on cars using this technology, and they need to be able to access a basic laptop with some of that equipment on it for them to be able to actually set up and do something with it. If not, all you're doing is producing more and more young people into the market, young men, young women who are looking for their daily bread, and they are going to be looking for jobs rather than helping to create jobs. So going back to it, you really have to get the teachers in place who actually know what they're doing, get the basic infrastructure in place, the basic technology, the basic tools. Anything you're doing in today's world which doesn't have an element of computerization inside it is unlikely to take you through that step change.
Well, Dr. Abani,
these younger
let's take a quick break. Let's take a quick break
to have this hands-on experience.
We're going to come back and continue this conversation. Sure. And when we come back, for most of the times you were speaking, you mentioned funding more than 5 times. And so we're going to focus on that in just a moment when we come back and continue this conversation.
Stay connected to the world with the Channels TV app for mobile to get all the stories around the world available on Android, iOS and Windows phones. Tap the expertise you trust. Touch the stories that touch you. Anytime, anywhere. Channels TV app for mobile. The news at your fingertips.
Welcome back. The conversation with Dr. Mark Abani, a development tax consultant, continues now. He's joining me still from our Abuja studios. Dr. Abani, thank you so much for sticking around. So let's continue this conversation and hopefully end it on a very favorable note, because it seems as if we've just been listing the challenges. And of course, it's a very critical aspect where we're hoping to get very good jobs created from. You talked so much about funding. Now, you also mentioned that there's a lack of electricity to power equipment. How can private and public financing work together to see an actualization of such a laudable project, which is getting our technical colleges fully back on stream?
The key thing, as I've said and as you've reiterated at this point, is the funding. Now, the funding cannot come from government. It needs to be an integrated public-private partnership. On the power, government does have to do its own part in order for the power to come in. But in terms of equipment and in terms of some of the funds that go in to train some of these people, it is very possible to pull together quite a number of industries who are looking for critical young men and young women who can help them to deliver their business. If a business can see, the private sector can see that you're actually producing graduates of your institutions, and when I use the word graduates loosely, at all levels, then they are able to actually do something hands-on with what they're doing. You will find out that some of these technical colleges can pair with local businesses that are around there, use the facilities in some of those businesses, also look for corporate social responsibility and corporate social investment of some of these larger firms in order to see if they can put in some of the equipment in some of the schools in order to be able to make sure. But again, the private sector is into things for profit. Now that profit may be in pounds, shillings, and pence, or it may be in people. So they need to be convinced that when I give you a piece of equipment to your school, that your teachers are going to be able to use it to teach your students. So that's where the public sector comes in, providing the correct level of teachers who will be able to do this. Also, the public sector comes in terms of some of the funding that will always have to be government-led. But having said that, there are a myriad of opportunities for the public and the private sector to come together in all of these various technical schools in order to be able to deliver some of the basic equipment, laptops, computers, and also to use a business approach within the institutions. So for instance, institutions can set up, if it's providing mechanical engineering services, people can go there to service their cars, which means that the software, which a lot of the firms can supply, will be used by them, and in charging the motorists who bring in their vehicles, the school also generates some money for itself. So money doesn't all have to come from government. There are lots of avenues to look for opportunities to actually make money while at the same time training this. I have to say this is not just a Nigerian problem. Across the world, this is a very big issue. So you find, for instance, in some areas like in Walthamstow, which is in the United Kingdom, an area where I know well, they had their caterers and their catering services. Once a week, they would teach the people, the students, by actually getting members of the public to come in and buy a meal from them. So the cost of paying for the meal pays for the materials inside there. In the process of cooking the food and serving the food, those who are involved in hotel management, in hospitality, are able to learn with real-life customers who give them feedback on where they are going wrong, what is going wrong, at the same time not having to look for money to cook up the ingredients or in order to pay for some of the ancillary services. So there are a myriad of ways in which this can be done. But behind all of this has to be a commitment. There has to be a value change, a cultural change that says we want our students to step out from here, the best in the world, and we are going to apply all of the money that is allocated for them for the purposes for which it is meant and not for other purposes.
But then, Dr. Abani, in the short term, are there any quick fixes, any modules that can be copied from some countries that have successfully, used the technical skills to upgrade their economies?
Yes, there are very good examples in Malaysia. In fact, in Malaysia, the youth technical schemes are part of the engine that has driven the changes that we are seeing in Malaysia. That's a country that a few years ago was comparable to Nigeria. If you look to more advanced companies, in Germany, over 50 to 60% of all students go down vocational and technical education routes because all the manufacturers are demanding people who actually have skill sets in order to be able to deliver things. So the whole process is integrated, and it's integrated backwards, starting from the lower levels of primary and secondary school. So the relevant skill sets required, and one of the primary skill sets required is a command of English. For Nigeria, its ability to read and write the instructions. So those can be addressed almost immediately. There are examples we can copy from elsewhere, but whatever we copy, we must have the commitment to make them work within Nigeria, because there's always a unique Nigerian way of doing things. You can also pick a few model schools where you already have identified you've got the correct staffing abilities, and focus on those ones to show as an example of how it can be done, to prove the concept, to actually show that a graduate who steps out from one of these institutions, these colleges, can actually make that difference, can walk into a job with minimal additional work being done. So, but you need to start with a focus, and you need to start with the ability to train.
Okay, so now, to start, they're talking about a revival. We have about 157 technical colleges. Should there be a reduction in this number, or should the federal government run with this number and hope for the best?
When you have 187, you are not going to be able to start on all of them at the same time. So you're going to have to triage you're going to have to look for the ones that will make the most rapid improvement with the minimum inputs. And you'll have to focus on those ones as a start. Now, there are going to be lessons that are going to be learned from that focus on those ones. You can then, from there, start to provide them as a focus for other ones. So if you were able to develop a sort of 184, 3 in each of the states, for example, you already have a significant number there. You're about half of that number there, and you have a number that you can deal with. Now, these centers can then have the remaining ones come in and learn what is it that we've done. You need to bring up the teachers. You need to bring in the funding. You need to prove the concept that you can work within that area. Ultimately, some of the colleges may have to close, but that's a political issue. And if you start from the end of let's reduce the number, you're never going to make any progress. Where you need to make the progress is by starting, first of all, by identifying the ones that can make the maximum amount of delivery in the shortest possible time, and then giving them all the support and help to be able to show that within a year, you should be able to have shown a step change. Other countries have addressed this educational gap issue and failing institutions by developing academies, which are public-private partnerships. They work through those academies, they give them the proper funding, the teachers are adequately rewarded, and as a result of that, they're able to turn around what were failing colleges, failing schools, failing technical institutions into performing ones. The focus in doing this has got to be, you can't deal with everything at the same time. You've got to focus. And so the first thing where I will be recommending is a very rapid audit of all of these colleges and their abilities, both in terms of equipment they have on the ground and teacher capability. And then from that, pick the ones where you will make the maximum impact first. Those ones can now become centers of excellence for other institutions to key into and to spread it. Nigeria has a very large number of people. There will never be enough colleges, but the people we're putting out, the young men and women we're putting out, need to be able to generate jobs as well as perform in jobs so that they are actually able to contribute positively to the economy, which is the underlying bottom line that Mr. President desires.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Abani, for your contributions on the program this morning. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show today.